11:51 at night. My phone lit up the darkness of the windowless den. A single notification from the bank app flashed across the screen. Payment declined. Insufficient funds. I froze. That account held nearly $3,000 this morning. Seconds later, a text from my mother arrived confirming the nightmare. We transferred your rent money to Tyler's account. He needs it more for his rebranding. You can cover this month yourself, right? My brother was asleep in my master suite. I was on a deflating air mattress in the storage room and my parents had just drained my account. Wait, stop scrolling for a second. Before I tell you what I did next, drop a comment and let me know where are you listening from right now. And be honest, have you ever had family steal from you? I'm reading every single reply. The last 3 months hadn't been life, they'd been an endurance test. It started when Tyler's latest crypto venture evaporated into thin air, taking his savings and my parents' patience with it. They pressured me to let him and Ashley crash at my place for a few weeks while they regrouped. My condo was a sanctuary I'd bought with years of 70-hour work weeks. It had floor-toseling windows, white oak floors and silence. Now it smelled like cheap vanilla vape juice and desperation. They took over the master suite immediately, claiming they needed the natural light for their content studio. I was relegated to the den, a windowless box originally designed for storage, sleeping on an air mattress that hissed itself flat by 3:00 a.m. Every night, coming home from my senior design job felt like walking into a frat house run by toddlers. My Vitamix blender was caked with dried protein shake. My imported throw pillows were stained with self-tanner. But the worst part wasn't the mess, it was the noise. Tyler recorded his hustle culture podcasts at 2 a.m, screaming into a microphone about grind sets while I lay awake in the dark, calculating the hours until my next client pitch. I'd walk into the kitchen at 6:00 a.m. to find Ashley filming a morning routine vlog using my coffee maker as a prop while ignoring me completely. Why did I agree to this? That question haunted me every time I inflated the mattress. It wasn't kindness, it was conditioning. Since I was 6 years old, I'd been trained to believe that my resources were community property, but my needs were selfishness. I was the reliable one, the steady one, the one who didn't need help. Tyler was the dreamer, the fragile genius who needed every advantage just to reach the starting line. My success wasn't mine to keep. It was a reservoir for the family to tap whenever Tyler's well ran dry. I'd internalized the idea that saying no to family was a moral failing. So I said yes to the invasion. I said yes to the den. I said yes to paying the full rent while they lived for free. I thought I was being a good sister. In reality, I was just making it comfortable for them to fail. But tonight, staring at that bank notification, something finally snapped. The conditioning broke. The good sister died in that windowless room and someone entirely different woke up. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't even wake them up. At 12:03 a.m. I opened my laptop and logged into my ISB account. My fingers flew across the keyboard, changing the Wi-Fi password to a random 64-character string of gibberish. Then I went down the list. Netflix logged out on all devices. Password changed. Hulu, Spotify, Premium, Amazon Prime cancelled or locked down. I unlinked card from the grocery delivery app Ashley used every morning to order her $18 smoothies. With every click, a cold, hard satisfaction settled in my chest. It wasn't revenge, it was sanitation. I was cleaning the parasites out of my digital life before I evicted them from my physical one. Finally, I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and lay back on the deflating mattress. As I stared at the ceiling, the invisible ledger of my life scrolled through my mind. It wasn't just the rent money. It was the time I missed my own college graduation party because my parents needed my ticket money for Tyler's bail after a drunk driving incident. It was the $85,000 business loan I co-signed for his drop-shipping empire 3 years ago. A loan I was still quietly paying off because bankruptcy would ruin his future. They had always treated my stability as their safety net. My savings account wasn't my future. It was their emergency fund. I wasn't a daughter or a sister. I was a venture capitalist for a business that had never turned a profit. And tonight I was closing the bank. They didn't knock. They had keys for emergencies, they said. Apparently, Tyler losing access to high-speed internet constituted a code red. At 9:00 a.m., I walked out of my bedroom to find a tribunal assembled in my living room. My mother, Jennifer, sat on the white boulet sofa I'd bought with my first bonus, her face pinched with the specific disappointment she usually reserved for my career choices. My father, Robert, stood by the window, arms crossed, looking at the city view he couldn't afford, and Tyler, He was sprawled in the armchair vaping, looking like a martyr who had just survived a war crime because his Spotify cut out mid-playlist. "Sit down, Olivia." My mother said it wasn't a request. "We need to talk about your behavior last night. It was incredibly destructive." I almost laughed. They had drained my bank account while I slept, yet I was the destructive one. "You stole $3,000 from me," I said, my voice flat. "I secured my remaining assets. That's not destruction, that's security." "We reallocated family resources," my father corrected, turning from the window. "Tyler is in a critical launch phase, cutting his internet access, cancelling his subscriptions. That is financial violence." "Olivia, you are actively sabotaging his potential." There it was, the twist. In their narrative, I wasn't the victim of theft. I was the villain of their success story. Tyler didn't say a word. He just exhaled a cloud of vanilla vapor and smirked, knowing he didn't have to fight his own battles when he had attacked dogs for parents. "Since you're so concerned with counting pennies," my mother continued, smoothing her skirt, "we've decided to formalize this arrangement. Clearly you resent helping your brother, so we're removing the ambiguity." She placed a piece of paper on the coffee table. "Tyler and Ashley need stability. The wear and tear on this condo is significant, with 4 people to support the family investment. Your rent contribution will now $5,600 a month plus utilities." The room went silent. $5,600, that wasn't just rent, that was a hostile takeover. They wanted me to pay double the market rate to sleep in a storage room while they played house in my master suite. "Think of it as an investment," my father added, his tone softening into that salesman cadence he used before asking for a loan. "When Tyler's brand takes off, this will all come back to you tenfold, but right now you need to step up." I looked at them, really looked at them. I didn't see parents anymore. I saw parasites looking for a new host. They didn't love me, they loved my credit score, they loved my compliance. And right then, standing in the living room I paid for, I realized the only way to win this game was to stop playing defense. "Fine," I said, keeping my voice steady. $5,600. I'll update the transfer for the first of the month." The relief in the room was palpable. My mother relaxed into the sofa. Tyler went back to scrolling on his phone. They thought they had won. They thought they had successfully negotiated a new revenue stream. In reality, they had just signed off on their own financial ruin. I wasn't agreeing to a contract, I was buying time. As soon as they left, I initiated protocol exit. This wasn't a move, it was a military extraction. I didn't look for another luxury condo. I didn't want a view or a doorman or prestige. I wanted a bunker. I found a studio apartment 6 blocks away, small, secure, and completely unlisted on the major sites. It was a sublet from a friend of a friend, a traveling nurse who needed someone quiet. I signed the lease digitally within an hour. No credit check that might alert my parents. No paper trail. Next, the logistics. I hired a moving company that specialized in high-sensitivity relocations, usually for celebrities or people escaping bad divorces. I paid extra for the silent pack service. They would arrive at 3:00 a.m. on the 30th, the one night a month Tyler went to his networking mixer at a club downtown, and Ashley visited her parents. I mapped out exactly what was leaving the custom sectional: the 80-inch OLED TV Tyler used for gaming, the router, the espresso machine, the linens. I wasn't just moving out, I was stripping the asset. But the final piece of the puzzle came 2 days later during a lunch with my friend Sarah, a contract lawyer. I had asked her to review my current lease just to make sure I wasn't missing any penalties for breaking it early. I slid the PDF across the table on my iPad. "I'm prepared to lose the security deposit," I told her. "I just need to know if they can sue me for the remaining 6 months of rent." Sarah scrolled through the document, sipping her iced tea. Suddenly she stopped. She zoomed in on page 4, then looked up at me with a confused expression. "Olivia, why are you worried about being sued? You aren't the primary liability holder." I frowned. "What do you mean it's my apartment? It's your apartment." She corrected, tapping the screen. "But look at the guarantor clause. 3 years ago, when you first moved in, your income-to-rent ratio was slightly off because you were freelancing. Your parents co-signed as guarantors." I stared at the screen. There were their signatures digitized and dated, Jennifer and Robert in their arrogance. In their rush to extract money from me, they had forgotten the fundamental legal structure of the condo. A guarantor isn't just a reference. A guarantor is the financial backstop. If the tenant defaults, the guarantor is liable for the rent, the fees and the damages. A cold, sharp smile spread across my face. I realized then that I wasn't just running away. I was handing them a grenade with the pin pulled. If I left, the management company wouldn't come after me. I was just the tenant who vanished. They would go after the guarantors with the assets. They wanted the apartment so badly. They wanted to double the rent. Good, they were legally obligated to pay for it. The 30th of the month, the eve of the new $5,600 rental agreement. At 9:00 p.m., Tyler left for his networking mixer at a club downtown, which really meant buying bottle service on a credit card he couldn't pay off. Ashley took the baby to stay with her mother for the night because she couldn't handle the vibes in the apartment. It was the perfect window. The moment the door clicked shut behind Tyler, I didn't relax. I went to work. At 3:00 a.m., the freight elevator dinged. The moving team I'd hired wasn't your standard 2 guys in a truck operation. They were specialists. They wore shoe covers and didn't speak above a whisper. I stood in the center of the living room with a clipboard directing the disassembly of my life. Everything I said, if I bought it, it goes. They moved with surgical precision. The white boule sofa wrapped and gone. The 80-inch OLED TV that Tyler had effectively annexed for his gaming marathons unmounted and boxed. They didn't just take the big things. I had them strip the place down to the studs. I took the router. I took the Dyson vacuum. I took the shower curtains, the bath mats, and the toilet paper. I even unscrewed the smart light bulbs I had installed and replaced them with the dim flickering yellow ones the developer had originally put in. By 4:30 a.m., the luxury condo was a ghost town. The floor-to-ceiling windows looked out on the city lights, but inside there was nothing but echo. It looked exactly as it had the day I moved in, cold, empty, and expensive. I walked into the master suite where Tyler and Ashley had been. Living, it still smelled faintly of their clutter, but the room was bare. Then I walked to the windowless den. I left exactly one item behind the deflating air mattress. It sat in the center of the floor, a sad grey puddle of plastic. If they wanted to live here so badly, they could start exactly where they forced me to live. Finally, I walked to the granite kitchen island, the only surface left in the main room. I placed 2 things on the counter. First, my key fob. Second, a printed copy of the lease agreement I had taken. A neon yellow highlighter and aggressively marked one specific paragraph on page 4. In the event of non-payment, the guarantors assume full financial liability for all rent fees and legal costs. I didn't leave a note, I didn't leave a check, I didn't leave an explanation. The highlighted text was the only conversation we needed to have. I walked out the door, the sound of my footsteps loud on the hardwood, and let the heavy door latch shut behind me. It was the sound of a vault closing. I didn't look. Back 9 a.m. in my new studio felt different. The light was softer, filtered through cheap blinds instead of floor toseling glass, but it was mine. I sat on my floor cushions drinking coffee that didn't taste like anxiety, watching my phone vibrate across the hardwood. It had been buzzing since 7:30. 47 missed calls, 12 voicemails, a string of text messages that started with confusion and escalated quickly into full-blown panic. I let it ring. I wasn't avoiding them. I was letting the reality of their new financial portfolio settle in. At 9:15, a FaceTime request from my mother came through. I set my coffee cup down and accepted the call. The screen filled with the stark white emptiness of my former living room. My mother's face was flushed, her hair disheveled. The camera shaking as she panned around the barren space. "Where is everything?" she screamed, her voice distorting over the speaker. "Where is the furniture? Where is the router, Olivia? Did you rob us?" I moved, I said, my voice calm, contrasting sharply with her hysteria. "I took my property. Everything left in that condo belongs to you or Tyler. You can't just leave." She flipped the camera to show Tyler standing in the middle of the empty room, looking like a child who had lost his balloon. "We have a lease. The rent is due tomorrow. $5,600. Olivia, how are we supposed to pay that?" I watched her on the small screen, a tiny frantic figure trapped in a glass box. For years I had been terrified of this woman's disappointment. I had organized my entire life around avoiding her criticism. But looking at her now, screaming about money she didn't have, I realized something profound. It was a concept sociologists call the illusion of resource-based authority. I had always assumed my parents held power over me because they were my parents, because of hierarchy, biology, and history. But in that moment I saw the truth. Their authority wasn't real. It was a subscription service I had been paying for. Their power over me was entirely constructed on the foundation of my compliance and my capital. They were only the masters of the house because I had built the house, furnished it, and handed them the keys. The moment I closed my wallet, they didn't just lose money, they lost their stature. They became what they always were, 2 people standing in an empty room they couldn't afford. "You don't have to worry about how I will pay it," I said, cutting through her tirade. "I've already notified the landlord that I've vacated. I'm just a tenant who broke a lease. I'll lose my deposit. But you," I paused, letting the silence do the heavy lifting. You co-signed as guarantors 3 years ago. That means you are fully liable for the rent, the fees, and the damages until the lease expires or a new tenant is found. And given Tyler's credit score, I doubt he'll be taking over the lease anytime soon. You can't do this to family, she shrieked. I didn't do it to family, I replied. I did it to my guarantors. You wanted the apartment for Tyler so badly. It's all. Here's, enjoy your investment. I didn't wait for a response. I tapped the red button ending the call. The screen went black. The silence rushed back into the room, heavy and sweet. It was done. 6 months later, the silence is still the most expensive thing I own, and it is worth every penny. I didn't get a front row seat to the fallout, but in a city like Seattle, news travels. I heard through Sarah that my parents had to liquidate a significant portion of their 401k to buy out the remaining lease and pay for the damages to the luxury condo. Apparently, Tyler didn't take the eviction well and put a few holes in the drywall before they got the keys back. Their credit took a hit, but their ego took a bigger one. Tyler is back in their basement, exactly where he started. Only now there's no rich sister to point to as a safety net. They are stuck in a loop of their own making, and I am finally outside the circle. I sit on the balcony of my new studio watching the city lights flicker. It's smaller. Here, I don't have a view of the Space Needle, and my kitchen doesn't have granite countertops, but when I put my key in the door, nobody else can open it. When I buy almond milk, it's there in the morning. When I sleep deeply without the subliminal anxiety of waiting for the next crisis to breach my walls. For a long time, I felt a phantom limb pain where my family used to be. I wondered if I was cold, if I was cruel. But then I realized something that I think everyone in my position eventually is to learn. We are taught that family is a biological mandate, an unbreakable bond written in blood. But that's a lie designed to keep people in line. DNA is just a biological suggestion. It's a lottery ticket, not a contract. True family isn't determined by who you share a history with. It's determined by who respects your peace. I didn't lose a family when I walked out that door. I lost a group of people who believed my value was calculated by what I could provide for them. I cut off the dead weight, and for the first time in my life I can actually breathe. The ledger is finally closed. The balance is zero. And I have never felt richer. If you've ever had to buy your own freedom from the people who were supposed to protect you, if you enjoyed this story, don't forget subscribe to the channel and share this story. You are not alone.